While the FDA is required to establish and update a list of tropical diseases that qualify for the program, this list has not been updated since July of 2020.
The Black community, specifically Black youth.
I feel like since I'm FDA Commissioner, all of my relatives from everywhere tell me about their problems.
How dependent is the United States on imported ingredients in pharmaceutical products?
It depends on how you ask the question. No, I can't recommend funding, but I would just say we need more research
Okay.
that those.
We'll just call it research, not money.
We're fully aware this is not the growers' fault. The changes have occurred in the environment that have led to a change in the content. And as I understand it, there's some tension between accommodating the needs of the growers, which are very legitimate, and the standard of identity, which is meant to preserve the tastes that people are used to.
Black Americans, Black Americans, Black Americans.
I want to thank everyone for joining us today as we review the FDA's Fiscal Year 25 budget request. Our witness is the Commissioner of the FDA, Dr. Robert Califf. Dr. Califf, I want to welcome you to today's hearing. I look forward to the discussion on not only the budget request, but issues and challenges that face the FDA. I want to recognize the critical work that occurs at the FDA touching the lives of every American every day. While it's not always flawless, America continues to be blessed with the safest food and drug supply in the world.
My dairy farmers face numerous regulatory pressures at both state and federal levels to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. Our opportunity for producers rests on FDA approval of animal feed ingredients that have a proven track record of reducing methane emissions. Currently, these feed ingredients have to go through a burdensome drug approval process. The FDA announced the withdrawal of policy procedures, Manual 12403605, which was designed to allow these feed ingredients to go under the feed ingredient review process for an ad hoc basis. Many dairy producers are interested in using these products in a voluntary manner, but can't do that until the FDA approves them. Can you give us an update on your agency's efforts to approve these products?
Much appreciate the question. I've been very involved in all the discussions involving the Center for Veterinary Medicine. We recognize everything he said is very important for our future and the future of the industry. And so, for the time being, we are encouraging people to come in early and often to discuss with us how to get these products through the evaluation. And I always feel the need to stress that we're looking to approve if the criteria are met for being a safe and effective product. So I'll prefer to call it evaluation rather than just approval. But the promise of this for our future as a human race is really substantial. I'd also say that, the current regulations are not optimal for doing this, so we're having to really bend the regulations with all the flexibilities that we can offer, which we're definitely interested in doing. But we'd really like to work with you on having legislation that creates a pathway that's effective for these products.
I introduced a bill with Mr. Franklin and Mr. Panetta that requires FDA to run pilots before the rule takes effect. I'd like to ask you whether you think industry is ready to take on this enormous task of implementing the food traceability rule, and if not, would you commit to doing pilots first, or at least delaying the compliance date?
Well, I can't speak about specific pending legislation, but what I can, as I discussed with Mr. Molinar's question, there's a tension here. The industry has to be ready to do it for it to work. The industry is not going to get ready unless there's some pressure to make it happen, because there are a lot of demands on industry's time. But I think the public health, as you said, this is an essential tool that we need for food safety. So we're in the process now having multiple interactions with the industry to try to figure out the best time schedule. Your suggestion of pilot studies is duly noted. We will have to have some phasing in. We're well aware of that.
In 2007, Congress created the Tropical Disease Priority Review Voucher Program to provide an important incentive for the development of drugs and biologics to prevent or treat tropical diseases. While the FDA is required to establish and update a list of tropical diseases that qualify for the program, this list has not been updated since July of 2020. My understanding is that there are 10 new diseases that are awaiting a decision by the FDA. The further Consolidated Appropriations Act, which was recently signed into law, included report language that directs FDA to maintain the necessary resources to evaluate PRV candidates in a timely manner. Does the FDA anticipate making a decision on whether any of these diseases qualify for the PRV this year? And if not, when do you anticipate FDA action on these applications?
Much appreciate the question. You're giving me some news I was not aware of. We'll have to get back with you. And I can't give exact timeframes, but from everything you've said, we'll have to move as quickly as we can to get these decisions made.
Okay, thank you. In February of this year, the Total Product Expo took place in Las Vegas. The expo's purpose was to showcase vapor products to independent retailers, but in reality, it was an open-air market for Chinese manufacturers to sell illicit vapor products. I understand that you were made aware of the potential for illicit manufacturers to attend this expo ahead of time in a letter sent to you before the expo from Senators Budd and Tillis. FDA was present at the expo, but did not take any interest in the illegal products being sold all about them. Even worse, after the expo concluded, your agency has failed to take any action against any of the manufacturers present at the expo, despite their clear and flagrant violation of the law. Why did you refuse to take any action during the Vegas expo, especially since FDA staff was present witnessing this illegal activity? And do you plan to take action against any of the manufacturers who were selling illegal products at the Vegas expo? Chinese producers are just flooding the market and with dangerous illegal products, and we need to address that.
Well, I don't agree we didn't take interest. We did see the letter. We were there.
I'm very disappointed that we haven't seen the finalized rule yet. The health impacts of menthol cigarettes have been studied by FDA for more than a decade. Menthol cigarettes cool and numb the throat, as you know, making it easier for kids to start smoking, and they're also more addictive and harder to quit. For too long, of course, tobacco companies have engaged in predatory behaviors, specifically marketed menthol cigarettes to the Black community, specifically Black youth. This explains why currently 85% of African-American adults smoke menthol cigarettes compared to 30% of non-Hispanic white smokers. More than 123 leading civil rights organizations, public health, medical, faith, youth-serving organizations have urged the Biden administration to actually finalize this rule. So can you let us know when it will be finalized and what the holdups are and how we can move this along?
I think I'm a cardiologist, and I practiced in North Carolina for 35 years. I probably have seen more people die from tobacco-related illness than almost any physician, because I was an intensivist who dealt with the end stage of the disease. This is a top priority for us. But when we make a final rule, it goes through an intensive interagency process, and that's where it is right now. I can't give details about dates at this point. I'll just say, from the point of view of the FDA and me as an individual, given what I've seen in my life, we're talking about, over the next 30 years, probably 600,000 deaths that could be averted. And most of these, as you duly note, are in African-American people who have been targeted by the industry for the sale of these products. So I'm with you all the way, but I can't give details about the interagency process.
Okay, the interagency process is cumbersome, but I mean, we have an idea, based on prior experience with rulemaking, 6 months, a year, 3 years. Do you have a sort of a time frame?
Whatever decisions are made, this doesn't sit around for 3 years.
Well,
But I can't give an exact time. I really am prohibited from doing that.
nor a time frame. Do you think by the end of the year?
It's one of our top priorities, so I would sure hope so.
We had a hearing just this week in the Select Committee on China about the fentanyl and all the precursors that they are deliberately subsidizing and manufacturing for export, similar to the tobacco products and how they're doing that for flavored for export only. So I guess my concern would be here with if there is a challenge with supply, are patients then seeking out these other alternatives that are far more dangerous, in essence, could be laced with these dangerous substances coming in from China?
I'll just say that's a valid concern and one we have to take into account. I feel like since I'm FDA Commissioner, all of my relatives from everywhere tell me about their problems. I have a very close, dear relative who does well on a stimulant in her studies, but not so well if not. And there has been a shortage, we're well aware.
My question really is, how dependent is the United States on imported ingredients in pharmaceutical products? Are we 50% dependent, 2%, 75%? All the different ingredients, what would be your ballpark guess on that? How self-sufficient are we inside our borders?
It depends on how you ask the question, but I'll go through this quickly. I spent a lot of time on this, and I would urge you to read a report from HHS that came out about 2 weeks ago that has all the details. But if you said, what about the key starting ingredients, which you can think of as petrochemicals? Most backbone for drugs comes from molecules that are petrochemicals, basically. Those are almost all coming from China. So if you say, how dependent are we? We're pretty dependent right now.
Why don't we get them here? We got more oil than we know what to do with.
Well, if I could give the second part, which I think has been a point that has caused some confusion. Those petrochemicals are then through what chemists do, made into API, and that's what people mostly talk about. That's largely in India and also distributed throughout the world, but India has played a larger and larger role there.
Why? In 15 years, have we not got a rule that is written that we can use to enforce what we need to enforce?
I have to say I'm not aware of that specific rule, but to address your issue, which I think is
Do we have a rule in place now to stop these Chinese companies from doing this?
I'll have to get back to you on that because I don't.
In 2009, your agency, I know you weren't there in 2009. 2009, Congress asked and expected the FDA to publish that rule.
Well, I believe the solution to the problem is what we've already discussed. If there's one thing that seems to be bipartisan here, it's that these vaping products from China are not good for this country. They're flavored, they're not even sold in China to Chinese people. I think what we need is help from you to have a system that allows us to do this efficiently, to deal with it. There are 300,000 retail stores selling these products. We can't be in every one of them. And let me just mention two things related to what you said. Our budget is basically fixed. It hasn't grown. And we get no user fees from the vaping industry. The budget is totally funded by user fees. The vaping industry has gotten off scot-free from paying the user fees. So the money that we're spending to deal with the vaping industry is taken from other sources because there is no specific money to deal with the vapes. So we have a request in to have user fees that would allow us to put many more people on the ground. But again, as I've thought about this a lot, particularly as this problem has grown, I think the solution needs to be something that gets rid of, that makes it possible to move efficiently to stop this before it gets into 300,000 retail shops around
That's the easiest way to do it, believe it or not. Cut it off. When the Chinese start losing product, when we start destroying their products at the ports that they're coming in, then we'll make an impact. I would also suggest that your department put together a skeleton of what you would like to see. Doesn't mean that's what will come through this committee and committees like it, but you can help us the most because most committees do not have a doctor that sits as a chairman, and he certainly does a fine job of sifting through some of this.
I have a lot of other questions, but I don't have much time, so let me just follow up a little bit. So do you feel like, and not all these things, of course, happen through this committee, but that we need more significant investments at NIH and CDC to give you the kind of information that you need to move forward, whether it's labeling or just making some of those connections on health?
Well, I can't recommend funding, but I would just say we need more research that those.
We'll just call it research, not money.
And we have great leaders now Dr. Bertinoli and Dr. Cohen, we talk a lot, and so everyone's aware of this need.
With respect to orange juice, but in 2022, the Florida orange industry submitted a petition to FDA to lower BRICS, the BRICS content, the sugar content required for not from concentrate pasteurized orange juice. There's no effect on the taste, and there's very little effect on the nutrient level. In fact, a lot of people looking at it as they're looking for healthier drink choices would say it's got fewer calories, it's got more vitamin C, lower carbohydrates, all those things. So it's a good thing for consumers, but more importantly right now for our growers who are struggling to get through greening challenges, the hurricanes and things like that, if the BRICS levels aren't reduced, Florida may be in a position where it can no longer provide pasteurized orange juice. And so more of the market's going to come from outside the country. FDA got overwhelmingly positive comments on the petition that was sent out about this. No real downside that we see, and yet 2 years later, there's still been nothing done with this. This would be a relatively easy and I think non-controversial fix that FDA could do to help us. Could you commit or comment on getting that rulemaking initiated?
We're going to get it done. The standards of identity started in 1939 with rulemaking, which is such a cumbersome way to deal with this because of the complexity of the regulation and all the things that have to be brought into play. But I think we're close to reaching an accommodation, and we're fully aware this is not the growers' fault. That changes have occurred in the environment that have led to a change in the content. And as I understand it, there's some tension between accommodating the needs of the growers, which are very legitimate, and the standard of identity, which is meant to preserve the taste that people are used to. I think we're very close to getting there. There's just some interaction that's occurring to get it to the right place.
Is there any kind of timeline we could commit to?
I wish I could give you a timeline, but I can't give timelines on rules.
Well, so the challenge we face is, we're one hurricane away, literally, from completely decimating the industry. And any lifeline we could get right now as they turn the corner on greening would really be.
I hear you, and we're going to move as quickly as we can. I'm told we're very close.
All right.
We know our opponents in big tobacco are powerful, well-funded, and well-armed. You've been quoted saying, "I've never seen more capable or nastier lawyers than what I experienced in trying to deal with the tobacco industry." Those are very strong words, and I think it's important that we shine a light on what they're doing here. What kind of tactics have you seen tobacco companies take in their efforts to delay and water down FDA's action against menthol?
I can't speak in detail on a rule which is being finalized, but the tactics of the tobacco industry are well described and often have to do with having surrogates who are paid to express their opinions, or stalling tactics done through legal maneuvers. And I'm not a lawyer, so the description of the lawyers, I would just say they're very effective.
The public is smart and they recognize these dirty tactics, which is why the menthol ban is popular. A recent poll indicates that 58% of Americans, including 62% of Black Americans, support FDA's rule. These numbers matter, especially when we consider that Black Americans die at disproportionate rates from smoking-related diseases. If we continue to delay, I'm worried that we'll never get it done. Given the incredible costs Black Americans are facing, we can't afford to wait any longer.
This right here, this thing that I can hardly hold up because of that weight, is over 150 articles from newspapers around the country, as well as letters from members of Congress in both parties urging the FDA to act on flavored vapes being illegally imported. All of this is in the last 12 months since you were last with us. Last year, you also acknowledged that fentanyl is showing up in these products. Addressing that scourge has got to be a whole of government priority, and I agree with you on that. I'm also on the China Select Committee, here with my new chairman of that committee. In your comments, it sounds as though we're on the same page here. You see this as a huge issue and a priority. But maybe the only difference that I can detect is that there's a difference in the level of urgency at the agency. I'm not trying to be funny, but I'm I'm wondering why you're not here literally with guns blazing, demanding action here, telling us what you're doing, what you see needs to be done, how we can help you address this. We regulate U.S. companies, and we should. They're easier, they're here, and that's proper that we do that, but we need to focus on what the problem is. And so, like some of my colleagues here, could you commit to providing this committee with a detailed breakdown of how many personnel are working on this issue, what it is that you're doing, but probably more importantly, if you had a magic wand, what would you like to do and how can we help you do this? This is, and by the way, your statement that we're a referee, not a rulemaker, I don't understand that. We're always responding to proposed rules from FDA. And so I think there's more here that can be done. And I just need to hear that sense of urgency that this is truly something that is a priority for FDA.
A couple of things off the bat. I recognize in myself, but having been an intensive care unit doctor my whole career, that I'm not the greatest at emoting. I tend to be a calming influence, not a fiery influence, because that's an important trait when you're dealing with critically ill people. Yeah. But I think the analogy is this is a critical illness in this country. I do want to also defend the hardworking people at CTP. I mean, these people work incredibly hard and get just criticism every day. It's hard. It's a tough job, but they're committed. They're public health people. They want to do what they can. As I've already said, and also with regard to the money that's gone to CTP, I want to remind you that all we're asking is for the vaping industry to pay its fair share, which it's not doing now.
I took note of that.
And those people will fund people who will specifically deal with the issues that you're concerned about. And with regard to the rest of it, I differ with you in terms of progress being made. We're seeing a steady decline in death rates from tobacco-related illness in this country, but this year alone, we're going to lose 460,000 people to tobacco-related illness, so it's still a very high priority. But when I was a starting cardiologist, most of my patients were 50-year-old people who were smoking cigarettes and having heart attacks and dying at a young age. That demographic has drastically changed, in part due to this work. But I've already told you that we need to do something different about the importation of products which have no health benefit and not even sold in the countries that are making them. We're going to need your help to do that, because I don't see how we can't put people in 300,000 retail stores. This is going to have to be stopped sooner than that.
What I hear you saying, and just to follow up on Representative Newhouse, you're asking for additional resources, but I still cannot get a clear understanding of what you're doing with the actual authority that you do have.
So, I mean, it's hard in a 5-minute space to give you all the details, but let's just say there's a cascade of things that we can do. It starts with warning letters.
Okay, let me ask you this. Of the 300,000 stores, how many warning letters have you written?
I'd have to get back to you with the exact numbers. One number that I think is useful is 40,000 warning letters have gone for selling products illicitly to underage. So it's not a small number. Okay. And then but we'll get you the exact numbers on each of these. Then we go to civil monetary penalties, which we can only exert after warning letters have been through several stages. There's like a second warning letter.
And what have you done in the area of civil monetary?
Thousands of civil monetary penalties. Okay. We're now looking at the issue of whether we can cascade civil monetary penalties so that if someone has multiple infractions, the amount assessed goes up. But that's a court proceeding. It's not something that we just give like a traffic ticket. It actually is a significant proceeding.
Have you done any court proceedings, an injunction or anything like that with your authority?
Then we have seizures and injunctions, and we've had several major seizures recently. In order for us to do that, we have to work with the Justice Department, because we don't have, our own legal staff is not imbued with the right to bring these proceedings. We have to reach agreement with the Justice Department, and then we proceed jointly.
FDA's approach to regulating dairy terminology being used for non-dairy products, particularly the term milk. My understanding is the court rulings that you cited don't prevent the FDA from requiring disclaimers such as substitute and alternative on plant-based dairy imitators. Would the FDA require the use of such terms to improve consumer awareness and also reduce poor health outcomes, particularly in children?
As you well know, first of all, I'm an avid milk drinker myself, so I'm sensitive to this. But as you well know, the two key things for us are, can the consumer distinguish milk from a cow from other things that are called milk? And the second is, are they aware of the nutritional differences, which is what you're referring to in terms of health? And so all of our regulations will make sure that that's the case.
You know, it says that one of the 5-part tests, the drug must be accepted by qualified experts. And even under the 2-factor test, it says that a qualified expert organization have opined in favor, and government agencies is one of them. Did the FDA consult with Dr. Volkow at NIH? I mean, she is the head of the Institute for Drug Abuse. Did you consult with her about the wisdom of rescheduling marijuana?
NIDA has a role in the process, and
This is a very specific question, Doc. Did you discuss this with Dr. Volkow?
the agency discussed it with NIDA. I'm not sure about I talk with Dr. Volkow all the time.
And you're
so-
aware that she is adamantly opposed to making marijuana more broadly available and rescheduling it.
I'm aware of her opinions, yes.
Okay, good, because I would hope that we'd think that she is like the expert in the country on it, and I hope you would have taken that into consideration, but I suspect you took it in very minor considerations, having come up with that recommendation.
So we fully funded your 2023 and 2024 requests on the issue. Can you talk about any notable successes in the effort, briefly?
I think the modeling effort is moving along, both extrapolating from in silico models, organs on a chip, all that, into humans, and also totally virtual AI. But we're a long way right now from substituting animals when we go to give a drug to a human being for the first time. I mean, remember that 90% of drugs that go into phase 1 testing, into human studies, don't make it to market because of unexpected toxicity already, and we don't want to be giving drugs to children or adults with serious disease without having proper testing done beforehand. So we're working on it. It's a big focus of our Office of Chief Scientists and our Arkansas National Center for Toxicologic Research.
The subcommittee is adjourned.